It's a constant barrage, isn't it? Trying to make sense of everything happening, especially, something as complex and frankly tragic as the war in Ukraine. You're sifting through news, social media.
Yeah, and it feels like you're just drowning sometimes.
Okay.
Getting further away from, real understanding.
Exactly. Which is why we wanted to really dive into this seminar document you shared with us. It's called Informacija, Makslagais Intellects pret uanumu Ukrainas kara contexts by Dana Seps.
Right. And it tackles this head on. It looks at how information and, crucially, AI, artificial intelligence, might actually be a powerful tool here.
Yeah, navigating this whole information landscape. So for you listening, if you want to get a handle on what's really important, without getting totally lost, that's our goal here.
Yeah.
We're pulling out the key insights from this document.
Focusing on that central idea, can information, especially with AI in the mix, effectively fight back against, the disinformation, the propaganda, and what the author terms evil in the context of this war?
Think of this as your streamlined guide, the essential knowledge. Okay, so let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. The document kicks off with a pretty powerful quote, actually. When information becomes the battlefield, AI must become the shield of truth.
Wow. Okay, that sets the stage.
It really does. Frames the challenge and the proposed solution right away.
And the author starts by defining information, which seems basic, but it's important here, isn't it?
Definitely. It's not just raw data. He defines it as information is roughly content plus the carrier.
Okay.
But the real key is that information itself is the meaning that gets understood.
Ah, right.
He uses the simple example, a mother calling her son home. The words are the content, her voice is the carrier.
But the information is the feeling, the urgency, the understanding between them.
Exactly, that emotional weight, the clear understanding. It highlights that the power is in the impact.
Okay, that makes sense.
So then the document looks at how AI can be this shield of truth, how it can play a role in the defense of truth, actively exposing disinformation, and maybe even revealing propaganda patterns.
Patterns that are just everywhere in the narratives around the war.
Absolutely. Pervasive.
Now, here's where it got really interesting for me. The author points out that AI tools, they're kind of like us in a way. They're not all operating at the same level.
Precisely. Different capacities for dealing with complexity. Some information is simple, some is incredibly dense.
And AI tools vary in how they handle that.
Yeah, and here's a crucial insight. Someone without, specific training might not even see those differences in complexity.
You mean in the information itself or in how the AI works?
Both, actually. Like in a really technical text or even in how an LLM, a large language model, spits out an answer. We get this response, and it seems simple.
But there's intricate stuff happening underneath that we might not appreciate.
Exactly. Which leads right to the big question the document poses. Is information a warrior against evil?
And the author's answer is?
A clear yes.
Okay, so what's the logic? Why?
Yes. Well, the core argument is this. The more complex the information a person or potentially an AI can really process and understand, the less likely they are to fall for harmful ideologies, to side with evil.
Okay. Why?
Two main reasons are given. First, education itself is seen as a form of enlightenment. It broadens your perspective, helps you think critically, exposes you to complex ideas.
Right. It builds that ability to see beyond the really simplistic stuff, the black and white narratives. And the second reason?
The second is that a good education acts like a defense mechanism against propaganda.
An inoculation almost.
Sort of, yeah. If you're equipped to handle complex arguments, analyze things critically, then those shallow, manipulative propaganda tactics just don't land as effectively.
That makes a lot of sense. And then this gets extended to AI, suggesting LLMs should be against evil by their nature.
That's the argument, because the thinking goes, AI operates on logic, on reason. It processes information rationally, and the document claims that the kind of evil we see in, say, the Russian aggression often lacks that logical coherence. It's built on distortions, on untruths.
So AI, being logical, should inherently be able to see through that.
That's the idea. It should identify and, in a way, reject it based on its own processing.
Which brings us to this field experiment proposal section.
Yeah.
The whole books as cognitive detectors of moral alignment thing. That really jumped out.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And it's not just any books. The selection is really specific.
Right, like quantum field theory.
Yeah, Bogly above it all. Testing, abstract thinking, complex systems. Then you've got the Hebrew Bible, and the Greek New Testament.
For linguistic depth, moral comprehension.
Exactly. Then permutation groups for logic, Charles Perrault's Puss in Boots.
Wait, Puss in Boots? Seriously?
Yeah. Apparently for exploring symbolic interpretation, understanding underlying narratives, and then some heavy-duty physics, differential geometry.
Wow. So it's a real mix, each testing something different.
Precisely. It's not just about reading them, it's about understanding them deeply.
The document calls it cognitive profiling, right?
Yeah.
Asking questions about the core ideas, the consequences.
Yeah, demonstrating true understanding. And the principle is that this depth of comprehension, as they call it, on this semantic intellectual scale, well, it might indicate resistance to evil.
So deeper understanding equals less susceptibility to propaganda and harmful ideas.
That's the hypothesis.
And then there's that thought experiment, the simulated soldier in the field.
Yeah, asking, realistically, how many soldiers in this conflict could actually grapple with texts like these?
And what does that imply about how vulnerable they might be to the propaganda justifying the war?
It's a stark question. The author even makes a pretty striking suggestion about using these texts somehow after the war.
It really hammers home that connection between complex thinking and moral reasoning. And it's not just theory, there's a technical implementation proposal.
Right. The idea is to build an AI framework where each book becomes a kind of complex prompt for LLMs.
Like a test.
Exactly. Ask structured questions, get AI answers, have humans evaluate those answers for depth, accuracy, alignment with truth, moral reasoning.
So using AI to assess the capacity for complex thought that might resist manipulation. It's ambitious.
Definitely ambitious. And the document then zooms out a bit, comparing 1937 and 2025.
What's the point of that comparison?
It's about the information environment. The sheer volume of information today compared to 1937 is just astronomical.
Orders of magnitude difference.
Totally. So the question is, could this information overload, maybe combined with AI, lead to a different outcome this time compared to the lead up to World War II?
Can information and AI actually, save the world from this kind of evil?
That's the hope being explored. And the document defines evil for both periods.
How so?
For 1937, it's identified as aggression against neighbors, atrocities against Jewish people. For 2025, it's the aggression in Ukraine, but also citing earlier actions in Moldova and Georgia.
And it highlights the current overload of anti-information propaganda of Russia.
Right, but also notes the significant global support for Ukraine, which is maybe a key difference.
That naturally brings up information suppression. The document touches on the old Soviet methods, like jamming Radio Voice of America.
Yeah, historical context. And then contrasts it with modern Russian methods.
The Tsar.
Still aimed at control, but way more sophisticated. State media dominance, police repression, blocking independent sites, encouraging denunciations, electronic surveillance.
The whole digital toolkit.
Pretty much. And the author points out this principle, spending millions to develop tools to oppress millions.
A grim point. Okay, then it shifts to different types of information in the war context. This was useful. It's not just true-false.
Absolutely not. There's helpful info, ironic or sarcastic info used to critique.
Right.
And information explicitly acting against evil, especially countering narratives that push for, say, appeasement.
And exposing and refuting, like finding U.S. parts in a North Korean missile reportedly used by Russia.
Exactly, that kind of concrete evidence. It also looks at information challenging certain peace plans, especially those involving concessions.
And even statements from the Russian Foreign Ministry are analyzed as information, showing their counter-narratives.
Yes, seeing how they frame things. Then you have examples of most useful information, like intelligence leading to arrests of spies.
And humor, too.
Yes, a whole spectrum. From what's called crude offensive humor, citing a Nevzorov quote, to useful humor that undermines the aggressor's credibility or points out absurdities.
Like jokes about historical memory or resource offers.
Right. And the feeling of being duped or strong critiques of political figures like Trump are framed as information warfare against specific ideologies, Putinism, and Trumpism.
That quote about Zelensky's ovation being a slap in the face to Trump, that stood out.
It did. And ideas like restoring Russia to its original size, Nevzorov's quote about Russia's negative contribution. It's all presented as part of this information battle.
Even AI poetry translations and quotes about political systems leading to a vacuum. It covers a lot of ground.
It does. Then it brings in Andrei Larionov's perspective, which is pretty blunt.
Yeah, what's his main point?
He basically asks, who in the West would actually order military action if agreements are broken? He's very skeptical about Western enforcement.
So who is enforcing things in his view?
He says the real enforcement right now is being done by the Ukrainian armed forces. That's the reality on the ground.
His conclusion is stark.
Very. He suggests only a direct nuclear threat might actually deter Putin.
That's sobering. Okay. Building on that, the document looks at Russia's position in the UN.
Yeah, this is critical. The argument is that Russia's violation of agreements like the CIS ones about sovereignty, non-use of force, and the Budapest Memorandum.
The one guaranteeing Ukraine's security for giving up nukes.
Exactly. Violating those fundamentally undermines its claim to the old Soviet Union's UN Security Council seat, especially the veto power.
You can't just ignore the rules that gave you the seat in the first place.
That's the core argument. You can't benefit from agreements you openly violate. So the document recommends the EU should push for review at the UN General Assembly.
To question the legitimacy of Russia holding that seat and veto.
Right. It stresses upholding international law and the dangerous signal it sends otherwise. Which leads into the 10 arguments about how AI specifically can stand against Russian aggression.
Okay, yeah, this section pulls a lot together. What are the key themes?
Well, it covers AI in info warfare, AI as a real-time witness and memory, AI demolishing propaganda, exposing secret deals, mobilizing support.
It also mentions interpreting Russia delenda est correctly.
Yes, clarifying it means dismantling the imperial war state, not the nation or people. That's a crucial point the document makes repeatedly.
What else? Predicting collapse, global alerts.
Strengthening democracy, mobilizing grassroots resistance. It's comprehensive.
But it also raises an important caution, right, about distinguishing genuine opposition from being contrary.
Exactly. When should AI raise alerts? It suggests focusing on things like incitement to violence, illegal acts, disinformation tied to hostile intelligence, hate speech.
And the safeguards.
Crucial. Transparency, human oversight always, nonpartisanship, and a right to appeal decisions. Essential to prevent abuse.
Makes sense. Okay, so after those 10 points on AI's role, it clarifies Russia delenda est again.
Yes, another 10 points really drilling down. Not genocide, destroy the empire, not the nation, demilitarize, depropagandize, democratize ideally, prevent future wars. It's about ending the threat.
A blueprint for a new order, using information and AI as tools.
Right, summary. Destroy the Putinist imperial war state, not the people. Then it tackles nuclear blackmail.
10 arguments on how to resist that.
Yeah. Show strength, break the myth of invulnerability, expose the bluff, solidify global responses, strengthen Ukraine, highlight Russia's internal weaknesses, accelerate isolation.
Invest in civil defense, promote the delenda est narrative strategically, and use AI in communication.
Exactly. It's a multi-pronged approach to neutralize the threat.
Then, 10 reasons why Ukrainian victory is essential.
This section is powerful. It argues anything less legitimizes aggression, erodes international law, fails to secure peace, normalizes nuclear blackmail.
Undermines the UN Charter, deters democracies, sends the wrong signal to China.
Weakens global security, isolates authoritarian regimes, and ultimately it frames anything less than victory as a moral and strategic betrayal.
Very strong arguments presented there.
Yeah.
And finally, 10 points on the unique power of AI against evil.
This really highlights AI's specific advantages. Speed, lack of corruption yet, perfect memory, cutting through noise, supporting the powerless, operating 247 across borders.
Exposing things in real time, learning, teaching, maybe even evolving to defend shared values.
That's the potential outlined. But it ends with a crucial reminder. AI's role still depends on us, for now anyway.
A necessary dose of reality. The document then touches briefly on philosophy, information versus intelligence.
Yeah, referencing John 1.1, in the beginning was the Word. It draws an analogy. Maybe information, the Word, and intelligence, like God, were both there from the start.
An interesting way to frame the interplay between AI and the information it works with.
It connects back to that dynamic. Then, right near the end, it lists Russia's stated conditions for negotiation.
And the document's assessment of those conditions is not positive.
Not at all. It lists them. Ukraine neutrality, stopping the supposed eradicating everything Russian, recognizing annexed lands, demilitarization, denazification, lifting sanctions, security guarantees against NATO.
And calls the whole list
Ultimatum of a loser. Pretty blunt.
Why?
Because, the document argues, each demand violates international law or Ukraine's sovereignty. They aren't a basis for real negotiation.
They're demands for Ukraine to accept the consequences of the invasion.
Exactly. An attempt to legitimize the occupation, legalize the land grab, and escape punishment. It's presented not as negotiation, but as demanding capitulation.
Okay, so pulling this all together after that deep dive, the core message from this source material is really clear.
Yeah, it strongly argues that information, especially when boosted by AI, is a critical weapon, a vital shield against disinformation, propaganda, and the kind of aggression we're seeing.
For me, one of the big aha moments was that idea of books as moral sensors, that link between deep comprehension and resistance to evil. That was quite something.
Definitely. And also AI's potential for, like, incorruptible memory and analysis, seeing patterns humans might miss or ignore. That stands out, too.
So, for you, our listener, we hope this dive gave you that structured overview you were looking for, a way to grapple with this complex topic using the framework from this specific document.
Which leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. Given AI's potential as this shield of truth, like the document calls it, what ethical frameworks, what guardrails do you think are most crucial to develop right now? How do we ensure it's used responsibly in this information war?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
And definitely worth thinking about. The document, by the way, has a bibliography if you want to dig even deeper into the sources mentioned.
Yeah, plenty more to explore there.
Well, thank you for sharing this really thought-provoking material with us. And thank you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive.